The afternoon sun hung bright in a cloudless sky as Andre Wilson rolled his wheelchair along the smooth concrete path of Riverside Park. At 45, he had the strong upper body of someone who had spent years adapting to life without the use of his legs. His arms pushed rhythmically against the wheels, his military dog tags catching sunlight as they dangled from his neck. It had been nearly 4 years since Andre had returned from his final tour in Afghanistan. 4 years since the explosion that had taken his ability to walk, but as he often told people with a wry smile, left everything that matters. He had built a new life now, a comfortable home with ramps and modified fixtures, a successful career as an IT security consultant working remotely, and a small circle of loyal friends who saw him for who he was, not the wheelchair he sat in. Today was Andre's day off, a rare Tuesday when client meetings had been rescheduled, and he decided to take advantage of the perfect spring weather. The park was relatively empty, just a few elderly couples on benches and mothers with strollers taking advantage of the midweek calm. Andre paused at his favorite spot overlooking the river, taking a deep breath of fresh air. He'd been cooped up inside for nearly 2 weeks straight, working on a major security upgrade for a banking client. The breeze felt good against his face, carrying the scent of newly bloomed flowers and freshly cut grass. He pulled a water bottle from the small pack attached to his chair and took a long drink. These peaceful moments were what he lived for now, simple pleasures that helped quiet the occasional nightmares that still woke him in cold sweats. The distant rumble reached his ears before he saw anything. The distinctive growl of motorcycle engines growing louder by the second. Andre didn't think much of it at first. The road ran parallel to the park about 50 yards away, separated by a line of oak trees. Motorcycles often passed by, but these engines weren't passing. They were approaching. 3 motorcycles burst through the park entrance, ignoring the no motorized vehicles sign. They roared down the pedestrian path, sending a young mother scrambling to pull her stroller out of the way. The bikers whooped and laughed, clearly enjoying the disruption they were causing. Andre watched with disapproval but kept his face neutral. Best not to get involved. He tucked his water bottle away and prepared to continue his route, planning to head in the opposite direction from the noise. That's when the lead biker spotted him. The man said something to his companions, and all 3 veered sharply, heading straight toward where Andre sat. His military instincts kicked in immediately. Assess the threat, evaluate options, prepare for confrontation. The rational part of his brain tried to override the alarm bells. This was a public park in broad daylight. Surely they were just being rowdy, not actually threatening. The lead bike, a black Harley with flame details painted along the gas tank, circled around Andre once, then twice, the rider revving the engine loudly each time he passed behind the wheelchair. The other 2 bikers pulled up directly in front of Andre, effectively blocking the path. Well, what do we have here? The leader called out as he finally stopped his circling and joined his friends. He killed his engine, and the other 2 followed suit. The sudden silence felt almost as threatening as the noise had been. All 3 men dismounted. The leader was tall and heavyset with a graying beard that reached the middle of his chest. A worn leather vest covered in patches displayed the name Blackjack where a name tag might go. The other 2 were younger, one rail-thin with a shaved head and arms covered in tattoos. The other shorter with a puffy red face and a patchy attempt at facial hair. Just enjoying the park, Andre replied evenly, his voice calm despite the adrenaline now pumping through his system. He'd faced worse situations than 3 bikers with attitude problems. Nice day for it. Sure is, Blackjack agreed with exaggerated friendliness. Perfect day for a stroll in the park. Oh, wait, he laughed, nudging the biker next to him. Guess you ain't strolling nowhere, are you? Andre had heard every possible joke about his wheelchair over the years. He'd learned that showing any reaction only encouraged more. If you gentlemen will excuse me, he said, moving to wheel around them. The thin biker stepped sideways, blocking his path again. What's the rush, buddy? We're just being friendly. His voice had an edge that contradicted his words. Don't like talking to folks like us? No rush, Andre replied. Just continuing my route before heading home. Home? The youngest biker spoke up. Where's home for you? Not around here, I bet. He looked pointedly at Andre's dark skin, the implication clear in his tone. And there it was. Andre had hoped the wheelchair would be their only focus, but apparently they were going for the 2-for-1 special today. He remained silent, calculating his options. The path ahead was blocked. Behind him was open, but he'd have to turn around, making himself vulnerable for a moment. To his right was grass, possible to roll through, but would slow him down considerably. To his left was a steep slope down to the river. "Asked you a question," the young biker said, stepping closer. "Where's home? This neighborhood getting too diverse for my taste lately?" "I've lived in this city for 12 years, Andre replied, his voice still steady. "My home is my business." Blackjack moved closer, leaning down slightly. "Everything about you is our business if we say it is. This is our park. We decide who gets to enjoy it." A couple walking nearby saw what was happening and quickly diverted to another path. An elderly man on a bench stood up and hurried away. "No help coming from that direction." "Last I checked," Andre said. "This is a public park maintained by the city with tax dollars. My tax dollars included." The thin biker kicked at Andre's wheel, not hard enough to damage it, but enough to make a point. Listen to him talking about tax dollars. "You even pay taxes, wheelman." Andre's jaw tightened slightly, but he kept his expression neutral. He'd faced insurgents in Afghanistan. He'd survived an IED explosion that had killed 2 of his closest friends. These 3 were nothing compared to what he'd already lived through. "I'd appreciate it if you stepped aside and let me pass," Andre said firmly. "Would you now?" Blackjack leaned in closer, his breath smelling of cigarettes and something stronger. "And what if we don't appreciate that request? What if we think you need to show some respect first?" The thin biker circled behind Andre's wheelchair, while the younger one stepped even closer, invading Andre's personal space. Classic intimidation tactics surrounding the target. Andre's combat training assessed the situation automatically. 3 opponents. Limited mobility. No immediate weapons except possibly his tactical pen in his pocket. Multiple escape routes, but all temporarily blocked. "I've shown you nothing but respect," Andre replied. "I'm asking you to do the same." Blackjack laughed, a harsh sound with no humor in it. "Respect is earned where I come from, and I'm not seeing anything worth respecting here." He reached out suddenly and knocked Andre's water bottle from the side pouch of his wheelchair. It clattered onto the pavement, water spilling out across the concrete. The younger biker laughed, encouraged by his leader's action. He moved as if to push the wheelchair, but Andre locked the wheels firmly and stared him down. "I wouldn't," Andre said quietly, his voice dropping to a dangerous register that had once commanded troops in combat situations. Something in his tone made the young biker hesitate. For a moment, the air between them crackled with tension. Then Blackjack broke the standoff by kicking the fallen water bottle, sending it rolling toward the slope leading down to the river. "Oops," he said with mock concern. "Looks like you dropped something. Better go get it before it ends up in the water." "Oh, wait," he smirked. "Stairs are going to be tricky for you, huh?" Andre remained still, his eyes never leaving Blackjack's face. The wheelchair was his mobility, but it wasn't his identity. These men saw only what they wanted to see, a disabled black man they could intimidate for their own amusement. What they didn't see was the lieutenant colonel, who had led one of the most successful hostage rescue operations in recent military history. They didn't see the man who had continued giving orders even as medics worked to save his life after the explosion. They didn't see him at all. "You know what?" the thin biker said, leaning down to speak directly into Andre's ear from behind. "I think Wheelman here needs to pay a toll to use our path." "What do you think, Blackjack?" "I think that's more than fair." Blackjack agreed, his eyes glinting with malice. "Let's say, whatever cash you got on, you should cover it. For today, at least." Andre took a slow, deep breath. The situation was escalating, and while he was capable of defending himself if absolutely necessary, that would be a last resort. Violence would only reinforce their worldview, and despite everything, he had no desire to sink to their level. Instead, he reached calmly into his pocket. The bikers tensed, perhaps wondering if he was reaching for a weapon. The younger one even took a half-step back, but when Andre's hand emerged, it was holding only his phone. "I'm going to make one call," he said quietly, his voice steady and controlled. Blackjack barked out a laugh. "Oh no, he's calling the cops. I'm so scared." He turned to his friends. "Better run before they show up in 30 minutes? The other 2 snickered, but they watched as Andre unlocked his phone with his thumbprint and pressed a single contact. He held the phone to his ear, his eyes never leaving Blackjack's face. "This is Wilson," he said after a moment. his tone shifting subtly to one of authority, despite the calm delivery. "I have a situation at Riverside Park, main path by the Oak Grove overlook. 3 individuals are preventing me from freely moving." He paused, listening. "No, sir, no immediate danger, but intervention would be appreciated." "Yes, sir. Thank you." He ended the call and placed the phone back in his pocket. "Who was that supposed to be?" the thin biker asked, a note of uncertainty creeping into his voice despite his mocking tone. "Your mommy coming to save you?" Andre said nothing. He simply waited, his posture relaxed but his eyes alert. The sun continued to shine overhead. The river flowed peacefully beyond the slope, and 3 bikers shifted their weight from foot to foot, suddenly less certain about the game they were playing. "Probably bluffing," the young biker muttered, but he glanced toward the park entrance all the same. Blackjack crossed his arms, trying to maintain his intimidating stance. "Doesn't matter who he called. Nobody's showing up anytime soon, and we're not finished having our friendly chat." But even as the words left his mouth, his eyes darted toward the park entrance just as the thin bikers had done. Something in Andre's calm confidence had planted a seed of doubt in their minds, and that seed was about to blossom into full-blown regret. The silence that followed Andre's phone call stretched uncomfortably. Blackjack shifted his weight, trying to maintain his imposing stance while stealing glances toward the park entrance. The younger biker took a half-step backward, his earlier confidence visibly wavering. "Who exactly did you call?" Blackjack demanded, his voice a touch higher than before. Andre remained calm, his hands resting loosely on the wheels of his chair. "A friend. Must be some friend," the thin biker muttered, moving from behind Andre to stand beside Blackjack, as if seeking safety in numbers. "He is," Andre replied simply. Something about his quiet confidence made the bikers exchange uneasy glances. Bullies typically counted on fear from their targets. The trembling voice, the pleading eyes, the desperate attempts to escape. Andre showed none of these. Despite being outnumbered and physically vulnerable in his wheelchair, he appeared completely in control of the situation. Blackjack forced a laugh, though it sounded hollow even to his own ears. "Listen, wheelman, we're just having some fun. No need to bring other people into our conversation." "I agree," Andre said, "which is why I suggested you move along several minutes ago." The young biker with the patchy beard stepped forward, trying to reassert dominance. "You don't tell us what to do. We go when we want to go." "And when might that be?" Andre asked, glancing at his watch. The gesture wasn't lost on Blackjack, whose eyes narrowed suspiciously. "What's with the time check? Your imaginary friend giving you an ETA?" Andre didn't respond. He didn't need to. The distant sound of car engines approaching the park entrance answered for him. The thin biker's head snapped up. "Blackjack, maybe we should—" "Shut up," Blackjack hissed, though his own expression had grown increasingly uncertain. "It's probably just park maintenance or something." But it wasn't maintenance. 3 black SUVs with tinted windows pulled up to the park entrance, moving with purposeful speed that immediately set them apart from casual visitors. They parked in a precise formation, blocking the main exit. The young biker took another step back. "I don't like this, man." "Stand your ground," Blackjack ordered, though his own voice lacked conviction. "It's probably nothing to do with us." The doors of all 3 vehicles opened simultaneously. 8 men emerged, dressed in civilian clothes but moving with the coordinated precision that screamed military or law enforcement. They wore no visible badges or uniforms, but everything about them, from their alert posture to their scanning gazes, spoke of professional training. "What the hell?" the thin biker whispered, his face paling. Andre remained perfectly still, his expression neutral as the group approached. The men moved quickly but didn't run, covering ground with efficient strides. They wore earpieces and kept their hands free, some with arms slightly away from their bodies in a position that would allow quick access to concealed weapons. As they drew closer, the bikers instinctively clustered together. The young one looked ready to bolt but seemed unsure which direction offered escape. The thin one kept whispering something to Blackjack, who had gone rigid, his earlier bravado evaporating like morning dew under a harsh sun. The leader of the approaching group was a man in his 50s with close-cropped salt and pepper hair and the weathered face of someone who had spent years in harsh conditions. His eyes scanned the scene with cold efficiency before focusing on Andre. "Colonel," he said simply, giving a short nod that wasn't quite a salute but carried the same respect. "Reynolds," Andre acknowledged. "Appreciate the prompt response." The thin biker's mouth fell open. "Colonel?" he repeated weakly. Reynolds turned his attention to the three bikers, his expression hardening. "These the individuals?" "Yes," Andre replied. "They seemed interested in a conversation. Perhaps you'd like to continue it with them." Blackjack raised his hand slightly, his entire demeanor transformed. "Look, there's been a misunderstanding. We were just talking, having a friendly chat. Is that right?" Reynolds cut him off, his voice deceptively soft. "Friendly chats usually involve blocking someone's path and knocking their belongings to the ground." The younger biker looked frantically from Reynolds to the other men who had now formed a loose circle around the scene. "We didn't mean anything by it. Just messing around, you know." "No," Reynolds said coldly. "I don't know." Two of Reynolds' men moved closer to Andre, positioning themselves on either side of his wheelchair without blocking him in, a protective formation rather than a restraining one. The contrast between how they treated Andre and how the bikers had was stark. "Sir," one of them said quietly to Andre, "would you like to press charges? We can have local police here in 3 minutes." Andre considered the question, studying the three bikers who now looked like they wanted nothing more than to disappear. Their earlier aggression had vanished completely, replaced by the universal body language of those who suddenly realize they've made a terrible mistake. "That won't be necessary, Diaz," Andre finally said. "I think a conversation will suffice." Reynolds nodded slightly, then turned his full attention to the bikers. Lieutenant Colonel Andre Wilson served this country for 22 years. He led one of the most successful hostage rescue operations in modern military history. 4 years ago, he lost the use of his legs while saving 37 American civilians, including my brother's son. The bikers seemed to shrink with each word. The young one looked physically ill. "Colonel Wilson now works as a consultant for various government agencies," Reynolds continued, his voice dropping lower, forcing the bikers to strain to hear him. "He has higher security clearance than most elected officials. And you decided to harass him because—" He let the question hang in the air. Blackjack's face had gone from red to ashen. "We didn't know that he was important?" Reynolds finished for him. "So you only harass people you think aren't important? Is that your criteria?" The thin biker shook his head frantically. "No, sir. We were just being stupid. It was a mistake. A significant one," Reynolds agreed. He pulled out a small device that looked like a specialized phone and spoke into it. "I need identification verification on 3 subjects." "Wait, what?" The young biker stammered. "You can't—" "Actually, we can," Reynolds interrupted. "Interfering with a federal consultant could be classified as a potential national security issue. At minimum, it warrants identification and background checks of all involved parties." Andre watched the scene unfold with mixed emotions. He hadn't called Reynolds for revenge or to frighten the bikers, though he couldn't deny a certain satisfaction in seeing their swagger deflate so completely. He'd called because he needed to resolve the situation safely. And sometimes the most effective way to deal with bullies was to introduce them to someone they couldn't intimidate. One of Reynolds's team approached with a small scanner. "We'll need to see your identification," he told Blackjack, who fumbled to pull out his wallet with shaking hands. "This is an overreaction," Blackjack protested weakly. "We were just targeting a disabled black man for harassment," Reynolds suggested. "Yes, we gathered that much." The younger biker looked close to tears. "Are we going to jail?" Andre wheeled forward slightly. "That depends on what comes up in your background check," he said calmly. "If this is your first offense and you have no outstanding warrants, probably not. Today." The implication that future incidents might be treated differently wasn't lost on any of them. As the team methodically took their information, photographed their licenses, and ran background checks, a small crowd of parkgoers had gathered at a safe distance to watch. The same people who had hurried away rather than intervene now whispered among themselves, smartphones occasionally raised to capture snippets of the scene. The thin biker noticed the attention and seemed to shrink further. "This is going to be all over social media, isn't it?" he muttered. "Public park," Andre reminded him. "Public consequences." Reynolds returned to Andre's side after ensuring his team had the situation under control. Nothing serious in their background so far. Minor offenses, traffic violations, one drunk and disorderly for the big one 5 years ago. Your call on how to proceed, sir. Andre considered the 3 bikers who now stood with their heads bowed like scolded schoolchildren. Their motorcycles, which had seemed so intimidating earlier, now just looked like overpriced toys behind them. "I think they've learned something today," Andre said quietly. "Sometimes the person you choose to target has resources you didn't anticipate." Reynolds nodded. "And sometimes the wheelchair isn't the most important thing about a person." "Never is," Andre replied with a slight smile. He wheeled himself around to face the bikers directly. "Gentlemen, I joined the military to protect everyone's freedoms, including yours. The right to ride your bikes, enjoy public spaces, and express yourselves. But freedom comes with responsibility. The responsibility to treat others with the same respect you expect for yourselves." The bikers couldn't meet his eyes. "I'm not pressing charges today," Andre continued. "Not because I excuse your behavior, but because I believe in second chances. I got mine when doctors said I'd never survive my injuries. Perhaps you'll make better use of yours than you have of your first." The young biker looked up, surprise evident on his face. "You're letting us go?" "With a warning," Reynolds interjected firmly. "Your information is now in our system. Any future incidents involving Colonel Wilson or anyone else will be handled differently." "We're very clear," Blackjack said quickly, nudging his companions who nodded vigorously. Andre gestured toward their motorcycles. "Then I believe our conversation is finished." The bikers didn't need to be told twice. They hurried to their bikes, avoiding eye contact with Reynolds' team and the watching crowd. Their earlier swagger had been replaced by the hunched shoulders and quick movements of men eager to escape an uncomfortable situation. As they started their engines, the young one hesitated, then looked back at Andre. For a moment, something like genuine remorse crossed his face. He opened his mouth as if to say something, then closed it again, apparently thinking better of it. With a last glance at Reynolds' team, he revved his engine and followed his friends out of the park. The crowd began to disperse as the spectacle ended. Reynolds' men returned to their positions, some heading back to the vehicles while others maintained a perimeter. "Will you be finishing your park visit, sir?" Reynolds asked. Andre nodded. "I refuse to let the incident change my plans." "We'll maintain distance but stay until you're ready to leave," Reynolds said. It wasn't a question Andre didn't argue. He knew Reynolds well enough to recognize when the man had made up his mind. "Thank you for coming, Reynolds. It was good to see you, despite the circumstances." Reynolds allowed himself a small smile. "Always an honor, Colonel." He hesitated, then added, "The secretary asked about you last week. Said to remind you about the standing dinner invitation." "I haven't forgotten," Andre assured him. "Just been busy with work." Reynolds nodded, understanding the unspoken truth. Andre had been avoiding social engagements, especially ones that might turn into job offers. He valued his independence too much. As Reynolds stepped away to coordinate with his team, Andre took a deep breath and looked out over the river again. The water flowed on, undisturbed by the human drama that had just played out on its banks. Above, the sky remained cloudless, the sun warm on his face. He retrieved a spare water bottle from his backpack and took a long drink. The day was still beautiful, and he still intended to enjoy it. After the bikers roared away, Andre finished his time at the park with Reynolds' team maintaining a respectful distance. The incident had shaken him more than he cared to admit, not because of any fear, but because it had forced him back into a world he'd been trying to leave behind. The military precision, the immediate response, the deference, all reminders of his former life. As the afternoon sun began its descent, Andre signaled to Reynolds that he was ready to leave. One of the black SUVs pulled up to the park exit to escort him home, but Andre politely declined. "I appreciate the offer, but I'll manage," he told Reynolds. "My apartment is only 6 blocks from here." Reynolds frowned slightly. "Sir, protocol suggests—" "I'm not active duty anymore, Reynolds," Andre reminded him gently. "And I'm not in any danger. Those 3 won't be back." Reynolds didn't look convinced, but he respected Andre too much to argue. "At least let us follow at a distance, sir. The secretary would have my hide if anything happened to you." Andre conceded with a slight nod. "Fine, but keep it subtle. Last thing I need is neighbors wondering why I have a government escort." "Understood, sir." As Andre wheeled himself toward home, he could sense the SUV trailing half a block behind. The incident had created exactly the kind of attention he'd been avoiding since leaving the service. For 4 years he'd worked to build a quiet life, one where he was just Andre, not Lieutenant Colonel Wilson, not the hero of Kandahar, not a symbol or a reminder of political decisions beyond his control. His apartment building came into view, a modest, five-story structure that had been retrofitted, with ramps and wider doorways. He'd chosen it specifically because it was accessible without being obviously designed for disabled residents. The distinction mattered to him. He didn't want special treatment, just equal access. Mrs. Chen, his elderly neighbor, was watering the small container garden she maintained beside the building entrance. She smiled warmly as he approached. "Good afternoon, Andre. Beautiful day, isn't it?" "It was certainly eventful," he replied with a small smile. She tilted her head, studying his face with the perceptiveness that came from 8 decades of watching people. "Something happened? You look disturbed." Andre considered deflecting but decided against it. Mrs. Chen had become something of a friend over the past few years, sharing homemade dumplings and stories about her childhood in Taiwan in exchange for his help configuring her computer and smartphone. "Had a run-in with some troublemakers at the park," he said simply. "Nothing I couldn't handle." Her eyes narrowed as she noticed the black SUV that had parked across the street. "And your friends helped?" Nothing escaped Mrs. Chen's notice. "Old colleagues," Andre explained. "I made a call," she nodded sagely. "Good. Even strong trees need support sometimes." She patted his shoulder. "Come for tea tomorrow?" "I made almond cookies. Wouldn't miss it," Andre promised. Inside his apartment, Andre felt the tension he'd been carrying finally begin to ease. His home was his sanctuary, everything arranged for both accessibility and comfort. Large windows overlooked the city skyline, and the open floor plan allowed him to move freely. The decor was minimal but warm, with photographs from his travels and bookshelves filled with diverse titles ranging from technical manuals to poetry collections. He transferred from his wheelchair to the couch and reached for his laptop. Work would be a welcome distraction from the day's events. He had a security system to design for a new client, and coding had always helped clear his mind. 3 hours and 2 cups of coffee later, his phone rang. The caller ID showed Secretary Thompson. Andre sighed. News traveled fast in certain circles. "This is Wilson," he answered. "Andre," came the familiar voice of Secretary of Defense Thompson. "Just got a rather interesting report from Reynolds. Seems you had some trouble today." "Nothing worth bothering you about, sir." 3 men harassing a decorated veteran in a public park? I'd say that's worth my attention." The secretary's voice was calm but carried an undercurrent of anger. "Reynolds says you declined to press charges." "Didn't seem necessary," Andre replied. "They weren't a real threat, just ignorant. And making it official would mean paperwork, statements, possibly media attention." "All things you've been avoiding," Thompson observed. Andre didn't deny it. "I prefer my privacy these days." "I understand that," Thompson said. "But I also understand that what happened today is unfortunately not unique. Not everyone in your position has a direct line to a Special Forces team." Andre knew where this conversation was heading. It wasn't the first time Thompson had tried to recruit him since his retirement from active duty. "Sir, with all due respect—" "Hear me out, Andre," Thompson interrupted. "I'm not asking you to come back to service or join the department. I'm talking about something different. Something I think might actually align with your desire to live a more civilian life." Despite himself, Andre was curious. "I'm listening." "There's a community outreach program being developed between the VA and local organizations, focused on building bridges between veterans, especially disabled vets and communities that might not understand military experience. It needs a coordinator, someone who can speak to both worlds." "A figurehead," Andre said flatly. "A leader," Thompson corrected. "Someone who can turn an idea into reality. Small scale at first, based in your city. No uniform, no cameras unless you choose otherwise. Just making connections that need making." Andre was silent for a moment. "Why me?" "Because you understand both sides in a way few do. You were raised in neighborhoods where police and military weren't always seen as friends. You chose service anyway, and now you're navigating life with a disability while still maintaining your independence and career. You're uniquely positioned to bridge gaps others can't." The proposal wasn't what Andre had expected. It wasn't about medals or speeches or being trotted out at political events. It sounded potentially meaningful. "I'll think about it," he finally said. "That's all I ask," Thompson replied. "Take the weekend. Call me Monday." After hanging up, Andre wheeled to the window and looked out at the city as twilight descended. Streetlights were beginning to illuminate the urban landscape, each one a small beacon in the gathering darkness. His mind drifted back to the incident at the park. Those three bikers had seen only what they wanted to see: a black man in a wheelchair, someone they perceived as vulnerable and out of place. They hadn't bothered to look deeper, to wonder about the person behind their assumptions. How many others made the same mistake daily, in both directions? How many veterans were invisible in their communities, their experiences and needs misunderstood? How many community members viewed veterans with fear or suspicion, unable to see past uniforms and stereotypes? His phone buzzed with a news alert. Curious, he glanced at the screen and was surprised to see a local headline: "Military team responds to harassment of disabled veteran in Riverside Park." So much for keeping a low profile. Someone's smartphone video had made it to the local news. The article was brief and didn't mention his name, but described a decorated veteran in a wheelchair being harassed by 3 motorcyclists before government personnel intervened. The comment section was already filling up. Andre scrolled through them, his expression growing more thoughtful with each one. Wish someone would stand up for regular disabled folks like that. My brother came back from Iraq and couldn't even get proper health care. Why? Do some vets get special treatment while others are homeless? Those bikers probably thought they could get away with it like they usually do. The comments revealed divides and assumptions from all sides. Some praised the military response, others questioned why such resources were available to one veteran, but not others, and still others focused on the harassment itself as a symptom of deeper social problems. Andre set the phone down and closed his eyes. Thompson's offer echoed in his mind. Perhaps there was something he could do, not as Lieutenant Colonel Wilson, but as Andre, a man who had seen both sides and now occupied a unique middle ground. His doorbell rang, interrupting his thoughts. He wasn't expecting anyone. Through the security camera feed on his phone, he saw a young man shifting nervously in the hallway. It took Andre a moment to recognize him without the motorcycle and attitude, the youngest of the 3 bikers from the park. Andre's first instinct was caution.
He activated the intercom.
"Can I help you?" The young man jumped slightly at the sound. Yeah. I hope so. I was at the park earlier. One of the guys on the motorcycles. I remember," Andre said neutrally. "How did you find my address?" "I didn't exactly," the young man replied, looking uncomfortable. "I saw which direction you headed after the park. Took a chance that you lived in this neighborhood. I've been asking around describing you." An older lady with a garden recognized my description. Mrs. Chen, Andre thought. He'd be having a word with her about giving information to strangers, even if she meant well. "What do you want?" Andre asked. The young man took a deep breath. "To apologize. For real, not because someone's making me. What we did was wrong. What I did was wrong, and I wanted to say it to your face." Andre studied him through the camera. The biker seemed genuinely distressed, his earlier bravado completely gone. He wore plain clothes now instead of his biker gear, making him look younger and somehow more vulnerable. After a moment's consideration, Andre buzzed him in. When the young man reached his door, Andre was waiting, positioned so the doorway was between them, accessible but cautious. "Thank you for seeing me," the young man said, his voice quieter than it had been at the park. "My name's Tyler. Andre Wilson," Andre replied, "though I suspect you already know that." Tyler nodded uncomfortably. "The guys who came to the park, they said you were a colonel, that you saved a bunch of people. That was a long time ago." "Still," Tyler said, "makes what we did even worse. Blackjack and Rez, the other guys, they've been in trouble before. But I haven't. This was my first ride with them." He shook his head. "Wanted to look tough, I guess. Fit in? And did harassing a disabled man make you feel tough?" Andre asked, his tone not accusatory but genuinely curious. Tyler flinched. "No, it made me feel like garbage. Even before those guys showed up. When you just sat there, not scared, looking at us like you could see right through us. Like you knew exactly what we were." Andre didn't respond immediately. He was measuring the young man's sincerity, weighing it against his experience reading people in high-pressure situations. "I'm sorry," Tyler said into the silence. "I know that probably doesn't mean much, but I am." "What do you want from this apology, Tyler?" Andre asked. "Forgiveness? Peace of mind? What?" The question seemed to catch Tyler off guard. I don't know. I just knew I had to do it. Had to at least try to make it right somehow. Andre nodded slowly. Apology accepted then. Relief washed over Tyler's face, but Andre raised a hand to indicate he wasn't finished. But apologies are just words. If you're genuinely sorry, show it through actions. Be better than you were today. I will, Tyler promised quickly. I already told Blackjack I'm not riding with them anymore. Andre studied him for a moment longer. How old are you, Tyler? 22. Work? School? Tyler looked down. Neither right now. Lost my job at the auto shop last month. Been staying with my uncle trying to figure out what's next. Andre made a decision then, one that surprised even himself. I might know about an opportunity. A program being developed. Nothing guaranteed, but if you're serious about making changes, I could put in a word. Tyler's head snapped up, eyes wide with surprise. Why would you do that? After what happened? Because sometimes people need a second chance, Andre said simply. I got mine in a military hospital when doctors said I'd never survive my injuries. But someone believed I could, and here I am. He wheeled back slightly, creating space in the doorway. Come in. We've got some talking to do. As Tyler hesitantly stepped into his apartment, Andre felt something shift inside him. Perhaps Thompson's program wasn't such a bad idea after all. Perhaps bridges could be built, one conversation at a time. And perhaps his next call to the secretary would be sooner than Monday. 2 weeks had passed since the incident at the park. Andre sat in his home office reviewing the proposal he had drafted for Secretary Thompson. After his conversation with Tyler that evening, he had called the secretary the very next morning instead of waiting until Monday. Some opportunities shouldn't be delayed. The program was taking shape faster than he had anticipated. Bridges, Andre had named it, simple, direct, and meaningful. Its mission was equally straightforward. Connect veterans with their communities through service, education, and dialogue. His computer chimed with an incoming video call. Andre adjusted his shirt collar and accepted the call. Secretary Thompson's face appeared on the screen, looking more relaxed than he typically did during official Pentagon briefings. Andre. Thompson greeted him warmly. How are things progressing? Better than expected, sir, Andre replied. I've secured commitments from 3 local organizations to provide meeting spaces. The VA regional director has approved funding for the first 6 months, and I've identified 15 veterans interested in participating as mentors. Thompson nodded approvingly. And what about community engagement? That's the bridge's other end. That's where it gets interesting, Andre said, leaning forward slightly. I've received 37 applications from community members wanting to participate. Most heard about the program through that news story about the park incident. The video had gone viral after the local news picked it up. Someone had caught the entire confrontation on their phone, from the bikers' harassment to Reynolds' team arriving and the aftermath. While Andre's face was visible, his name had been kept out of most reports, identified only as a decorated veteran. But the video had sparked conversations about how veterans were treated, especially those with disabilities. Sometimes good things come from unpleasant situations, Thompson observed. Have you found a suitable location for the headquarters? I think so, Andre replied. There's a community center in the River District that's been underutilized. 2 rooms, accessible entrance, centrally located between different neighborhoods. The director is offering 6 months rent-free if we renovate the space. Sounds promising. And your young friend? How's he working out? Andre smiled slightly. Taking a chance on Tyler had been a gut decision, one he hadn't been entirely sure about. Surprisingly well. He's eager to prove himself. Shows up early, stays late. His background in auto mechanics has been useful for the accessibility modifications we're planning. What Andre didn't mention was how Tyler had become something of a bridge himself between Andre's military world and the local community. The young man knew people Andre would never have connected with otherwise. From garage owners to community artists, those connections were already proving valuable. Good to hear, Thompson said. The first installment of funding should hit the account tomorrow. I've also arranged for Captain Richards to be your liaison with the VA. She's one of our best, served in medical corps, understands both military and civilian healthcare systems. Andre nodded. He'd reviewed Richards' file and been impressed. Another good bridge person. When's your official launch date? Thompson asked. 3 weeks from now. Small ceremony. Nothing flashy. Just enough to let people know we're open for business. Thompson leaned back in his chair. I'd like to attend if that's all right with you. Andre hesitated. Having the Secretary of Defense at the opening would bring exactly the kind of attention he'd been avoiding. Sir, with respect, this is supposed to be low profile, community-based. I understand, Thompson replied. But some initiatives need a little spotlight to grow. I won't make a speech or turn it into a media circus. Just a show of support. After a moment, Andre nodded. We'd be honored to have you there, sir. As the call ended, Andre wheeled himself to the window. The view of the city had become familiar over the years, but today it looked different somehow. Like he was seeing not just what was there, but what could be. His phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. Finished painting the meeting room. Starting on the ramp tomorrow. Still need help with the website, though. Andre smiled. Tyler had many skills, but technology wasn't one of them. I'll handle the website, he texted back. Send photos of the painting when you get a chance. His phone rang almost immediately after he sent the text. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize. This is Wilson, he answered. Colonel Wilson? The voice was vaguely familiar. This is Ray Barnes. People call me Razor. I was at the park that day with Blackjack and Tyler. Andre's grip tightened on the phone. The thin biker. I remember. Tyler told me about this program you're starting, Razor said, his voice uncomfortable but determined. Said you gave him a chance to make things right. That's correct, Andre replied neutrally. I was wondering. Razor paused, then continued in a rush. I was wondering if maybe there might be a spot for me too. I messed up. I know that. But I'm trying to get my life straight, and this sounds like something good. Andre hadn't expected this. Tyler, yes, the young man had shown immediate remorse. But Razor had seemed like a hardened follower, content to go along with Blackjack's lead. Why should I consider you? Andre asked directly. You were just as involved in what happened. I know, Razor admitted. No excuses. But that day, seeing those guys show up for you like that, nobody's ever shown up for me like that, made me think about what I've been doing with my life, who I've been following. And Blackjack? What does he think about you reaching out? Razor's laugh was bitter. Don't know, don't care. Haven't spoken to him since that day. He's still acting like we're the victims somehow. Andre considered the request carefully. Second chances were important, but trust had to be earned. I can't promise anything, he finally said, but come by the community center tomorrow at 9. Tyler can give you the address. We'll talk. Thank you, sir, Razor said, relief evident in his voice. You won't regret it. After hanging up, Andre sat in silence for several minutes. The program was taking an unexpected direction. He had envisioned connecting veterans with community members who wanted to learn about military experience. But now it seemed like it might also become a place for people seeking their own second chances. The next morning, Andre arrived at the community center early. The building was old but solid, with good bones beneath the worn exterior. Tyler had already made significant progress on the renovations. Fresh paint brightened the main meeting room, and supplies for building the new accessibility ramp were neatly stacked by the entrance. Andre heard voices from the back room and wheeled himself toward the sound. He found Tyler showing Razor how to properly sand the old hardwood floor. Both men looked up as he entered. Morning, Colonel, Tyler greeted him, standing quickly. He had started calling Andre Colonel, despite Andre's insistence that first names were fine. Old habits and respect ran deep. Razor stood more slowly, uncertainty written across his face. He looked different without his biker gear. Thinner, younger, less intimidating. Sir, he said with a nod. I see you've already put him to work, Andre observed to Tyler. Tyler grinned. Figured it couldn't hurt to get started. Razor knows his way around tools. Andre studied Razor thoughtfully. Let's talk in the other room, he said. Once they were seated in the freshly painted meeting room, Andre got straight to the point. Tyler vouches for you, says you're sincere about wanting to change direction. But I need to hear it from you. Why this program? Why now? Razor took a deep breath. My real name's Raymond, Ray. The whole Razor thing was just trying to be someone I thought was tough. He shook his head. After what happened at the park, I couldn't stop thinking about it. About how you just sat there calm while we acted like fools. And then those men showed up. Not just showing up, but respecting you. Really respecting you. He looked down at his hands. Nobody's ever respected me like that. Feared, maybe, but not respected. He met Andre's gaze. I want to know what that feels like. To be the kind of man people respect for real reasons, not because they're scared of me. Andre nodded slowly. The honesty was refreshing. This program isn't about me, Ray. It's about building connections between people who might not otherwise meet. Veterans, community members, people who need second chances. Like me, Ray said quietly. Like all of us in different ways, Andre corrected. I'm offering you a provisional position. 3 months. You'll help with renovations, attend the meetings, listen more than you talk. At the end of 3 months, we'll reevaluate. Ray nodded eagerly. That's fair. More than fair. One more thing, Andre added. I expect complete honesty. About your past, your present circumstances, everything. This program is built on trust. Ray hesitated, then nodded again. There are things I'm not proud of. But I'll be straight with you. That's all I ask. Andre extended his hand and Ray shook it firmly. Over the next 2 weeks, the community center transformed. The main meeting room was fully renovated, with a circle of comfortable chairs replacing the old rows of metal seating. The accessibility ramp was completed, sturdy and well-designed rather than the afterthought such accommodations often were. A small kitchen was updated to provide coffee and simple meals during meetings. More importantly, word was spreading. Andre had received applications from 43 veterans and over 60 community members interested in participating. Local businesses had started reaching out about potential partnerships. A nearby coffee shop offered to provide refreshments for the opening ceremony. A printing company donated brochures and signage. The night before the launch, Andre stayed late at the center making final preparations. The space was ready, but he still felt the nervousness that preceded any important mission. Tomorrow would set the tone for everything that followed. He heard the front door open and looked up to see Captain Lisa Richards, his VA liaison, walking in. She carried a folder and a determined expression. I thought I might find you here, she said. Burning the midnight oil? Just making sure everything's ready, Andre replied. What brings you by so late? She held up the folder. Final approval on the funding came through. Wanted to deliver it personally and see how things are shaping up. She looked around appreciatively. Impressive work in such a short time. I've had good help, Andre acknowledged. Lisa sat in one of the new chairs across from him. I also wanted to talk to you about something else. The secretary mentioned you were taking on some interesting recruits. Andre smiled slightly. News travels fast. In certain circles, yes, she agreed. 2 of the men who harassed you are now working for your program. That's an unusual choice. Second chances matter, Andre said simply. I wouldn't be here without mine. Lisa studied him thoughtfully. You're building more than just a veterans outreach program, aren't you? I'm building bridges, Andre replied. Between veterans and civilians, yes. But also between people who've made mistakes and the second chances they need. Between who we were and who we can become, she nodded slowly. The secretary said you were the right person for this. I think he underestimated just how right. As Lisa left, Andre wheeled himself around the room one more time. Tomorrow, these chairs would be filled with people from different walks of life, with different stories and different wounds. Some visible, others hidden beneath the surface. All of them looking for connections, for understanding, for bridges to cross. He thought about the unlikely path that had led here. A confrontation in a park, a phone call, 3 bikers who had seen only a target, not a person. If someone had told him then that 2 of those men would help build this program, he would have laughed in disbelief. Yet here they were. And tomorrow they would take the first step across a new bridge together. The morning of the launch, Andre woke before dawn. He lay in bed for a moment, listening to the quiet of his apartment, mentally reviewing the day ahead. 6 months ago, he couldn't have imagined being here, about to launch a community program, working alongside 2 men who had once harassed him, preparing to welcome the Secretary of Defense to an initiative he had created. Life had a way of taking unexpected turns. After his morning routine, Andre dressed carefully in a navy blue button-down shirt and charcoal slacks. Professional, but not formal. No uniform, no medals. Today wasn't about his military service. It was about what came after. When he arrived at the community center, he was surprised to find Tyler and Ray already there, making final preparations. Tyler was arranging chairs in a perfect circle, while Ray brewed coffee in the newly renovated kitchen. You're both early, Andre observed, wheeling himself into the room. Couldn't sleep, Tyler admitted with a sheepish grin. Too nervous. Ray nodded in agreement. Big day. Andre understood completely. Let's go through the schedule one more time. The three men sat down with their coffee and reviewed the day's plan. The official opening was set for 10 a.m. with Secretary Thompson arriving at 9:45. The first hour would include brief introductions and an overview of the program. After lunch, provided by a local restaurant that had donated the food, they would break into smaller groups for more in-depth conversations. Remember, Andre told them, today isn't about speeches or formalities. It's about making connections. Your job is to help people feel comfortable, to bridge gaps when conversations stall. Both men nodded seriously. Over the past weeks, Andre had been impressed by their commitment. Tyler had blossomed with responsibility, revealing a natural talent for organization and a genuine way with people. Ray was quieter but thorough, reliable in his work and increasingly open in discussions. As 9:30 approached, the first participants began to arrive. Veterans came first. Men and women of different ages and backgrounds, some with visible disabilities, others with wounds that couldn't be seen. Andre greeted each one personally, introducing them to Tyler and Ray without explaining the complicated history between them. Community members followed, teachers, business owners, students, retirees, all curious about the program and what it might offer. Andre had been careful in the selection process, choosing people who seemed genuinely interested in understanding, rather than those with political agendas or simplistic notions about military service. At exactly 9:45, the sleek black government vehicles pulled up outside. Secretary Thompson entered without fanfare, accompanied by only 2 aides rather than his usual entourage. He had kept his promise to keep things low-key. Andre, he said warmly, shaking hands. This is impressive work in such a short time. Thank you, sir, Andre replied. Let me introduce you to my team. As Andre led the secretary around the room, he felt a strange sense of worlds colliding, his military past, his civilian present, and a future that suddenly seemed wider with possibilities. Thompson spoke easily with veterans and civilians alike, his position of authority balanced by a genuine interest in what people had to say. At 10 sharp, Andre moved to the center of the room and called for attention. The crowd quieted quickly, all eyes turning toward him. Good morning, he began. Thank you all for coming today. 6 weeks ago, bridges was just an idea, a response to an incident that could have ended very differently. His eyes found Tyler and Ray standing at the back of the room. Both men straightened slightly, accepting their place in the story without hiding from it. Many of you have seen the video of what happened in Riverside Park. Andre continued. What you didn't see was what happened afterward. Conversations that led to understanding. Mistakes that led to opportunities. Bridges that began to form between people who thought they had nothing in common. He gestured around the room. That's what we're doing here. Building bridges. Between veterans and the communities they return to. Between people with different experiences and perspectives. Between who we were and who we can become. As Andre spoke, the door at the back of the room opened quietly. A large man with a graying beard slipped in, trying not to draw attention. Blackjack. He looked uncomfortable in clean jeans and a button-down shirt, clearly dressed for the occasion. He stood awkwardly just inside the door, eyes scanning the room until they landed on Tyler and Ray. The three exchanged a long look before Tyler gave a slight nod, inviting Blackjack to join them. Andre noticed the exchange but continued without pausing. Today is just the beginning. Over the coming months, we'll be developing mentorship programs, community service projects, and dialogue sessions. Some will be challenging, some will be uncomfortable, all will be worthwhile. He finished his brief introduction and turned the floor over to Captain Richards to explain the VA's involvement. As she spoke, Andre wheeled himself to the back of the room where the 3 bikers now stood together. I wasn't sure you'd come, he said quietly to Blackjack. The big man shifted uncomfortably, wasn't planning to, but these 2 kept working on me. He gestured toward Tyler and Ray. Said I should hear what you're doing here. Andre studied him carefully. And now that you're here? Blackjack looked around the room, taking in the diverse group engaged in conversation. It's not what I expected, he admitted. What did you expect? I don't know. Something more political maybe, more judgmental. Andre nodded thoughtfully. That's not what bridges are about. They don't judge who crosses them. They just make crossing possible. The morning passed quickly. After the introductions, the group broke into smaller circles for conversations guided by simple questions. What do you wish people understood about your experience? What assumptions have you made that you'd like to reconsider? What bridges do you think need building in our community? Andre moved between the groups, listening more than speaking, watching as veterans opened up about their experiences and civilians asked thoughtful questions. In one corner, a young teacher was deep in conversation with an older veteran about how to help military children adjust to new schools. In another, a business owner and a recently discharged Marine were discussing employment opportunities for veterans. Tyler led one of the groups with surprising skill, drawing out quieter participants and gently redirecting conversations when they veered into unproductive territory. Ray worked alongside the volunteers managing the refreshments, but Andre noticed him engaging in more conversations as the day progressed, his initial shyness gradually giving way to genuine interest. Blackjack remained on the periphery, watching everything with an unreadable expression. Yet he stayed hour after hour, occasionally nodding at something he heard or moving closer to listen to a particular conversation. As the scheduled end of the event approached, Andre found himself seated next to Secretary Thompson in a quiet corner. "This exceeds my expectations, Andre," Thompson said, "and I had high expectations." "It's just the beginning," Andre replied. "We have a lot of work ahead," Thompson nodded. "Yes, but you've laid the right foundation. These aren't just conversations, they're connections. Real ones." He glanced toward Tyler and Ray, who were helping an elderly veteran navigate the refreshment table. "Those two young men, they were part of the incident at the park?" "Yes," Andre confirmed. "They've been instrumental in getting this off the ground." "Remarkable," Thompson said quietly. "From harassment to help in such a short time. People can surprise you," Andre said, "if you give them the chance." As Thompson was called away by one of his aides, Andre noticed Blackjack finally approaching one of the conversation circles. The group included a veteran who had lost both legs in combat and was describing the challenges of navigating a world not designed for wheelchairs. Blackjack listened intently, his expression thoughtful. When the official event ended and most participants had departed, Tyler and Ray began cleaning up. Blackjack lingered, apparently unsure whether to help or leave. Andre wheeled over to him. "Thank you for coming," he said sincerely. Blackjack nodded awkwardly. "Those guys you served with," he said abruptly, "the ones who came to the park that day, they really respect you." "We've been through a lot together," Andre replied. "That kind of respect." Blackjack shook his head. "Never had that. Not the real kind." Andre considered his next words carefully. "Respect isn't something you can demand, despite what many think. It's something you build like a bridge. Takes time. Takes work." Blackjack was silent for a long moment. "Tyler says you gave him a second chance." "Ray too." "I did." "Why?" Blackjack asked bluntly. "After what we did?" Andre looked around the community center, at the space they had transformed together, at the program built on the foundation of a confrontation that could have ended very differently. "Because second chances matter," he said simply. "I got mine in a military hospital when doctors said I wouldn't make it. Tyler and Ray are making the most of theirs." He met Blackjack's eyes directly. "The question is, what would you do with one?" Blackjack didn't answer immediately. He looked over at Tyler and Ray, who were watching the exchange from across the room. "I'm not good at talking about feelings and all that," he finally said. "Not good at admitting when I'm wrong. But I was wrong that day. About you? About a lot of things." For Blackjack, Andre suspected, those few sentences represented a major concession. "We need volunteers for the community service project next weekend," Andre said. "Rebuilding the playground in Eastside Park if you're interested." Blackjack nodded slowly. "I could help with that. Good with my hands." 9 a.m. Saturday, Andre told him. "Tyler has the details." As Blackjack walked over to speak with Tyler and Ray, Captain Richards approached Andre.